hopefully the government also gives that nudge for the eagle to take the flight.
Okay, very, very well said, Mr. Mukundan. And yes, expect some realistic changes, but dream budget or not, we'll have to wait a little while. It's a busy day ahead, so I'm going to let the both of you go. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Back to Zaka and Rahul in the studio.
All right, we can see the Union Cabinet ministers, one after another, arriving there for the Cabinet meeting. The Finance Minister, the Home Minister, you saw Mr. Piyush Goyal coming to the Parliament complex as well. The Union budget has now been officially approved by the Union Cabinet, and at 11 a.m. the Finance Minister will of course rise in the Lok Sabha to present the budget. As you see the ministers arriving there for the Cabinet meeting. These are shots from a while ago. The Prime Minister also arrived and the Cabinet has met, and the Cabinet has given its customary stamp of approval to the Union Budget 2025. As we bring the conversation back into the studios, so Rahul, you were looking at one of the op-ed pieces today, arguing for why this should be a 1991 moment. We've had reforms for 25 years. Do you believe this is a fork in the road and that India needs to seize this moment? Because if we don't, then we could be set back by a few years.
So we're sitting on a demographic dividend, as we know. But if you're not going to utilize it, there's going to be a problem. And it's also going to be a political problem. It's going to be a political challenge to accommodate those aspirations going further. So it makes political sense more than anything else now to press the accelerator. And given the volatile situation globally, the disincentivization of, the flow of both material and people across borders, this is the time when you look inwards domestically. That's what the CA's underlying message is. And he's used this brilliant phrase that you've got to actually give a stimulus when it comes to deregulation. Forget the financial stimulus. You've done that heavy lifting. You've given that financial injection. You gave it in the last budget. You gave it in the budget before that. Now deregulate. Open those animal spirits that entrepreneurial culture in this country yearn for. And I think fundamentally, if you don't do it now, you don't take advantage of this. And you've got even that political window that you were referring to, that 2 years before the UP election, 2027, you've got that elbow room. The prospects for the BJP in some of the states that are going to the polls, barring Bihar, are not the brightest. They could do better. In fact, if they did something today, maybe they could reap the whirlwind. If they sow the whirlwind today, they might reap a harvest later. So fundamentally, I think 3 or 4 things need to be done. And I think if the government is willing to bite the bullet a little bit, I think fundamentally we can see the countries adding a GDP percent a little bit more than that, perhaps. And that's where we really need to be, isn't it?
This whole thing about protectionism in the West is a great opportunity for us. Anyway, we were not the Chinese export-driven model, Gautam. Correct. We were always talking about the big consumer market, the domestic market here. How do we rebalance? Today, the survey says up to almost a quarter of this thing is coming from international trade. That's going to come down. That is a reality, whether it's the US, Europe, whatever it is. How do you rebalance that to focus on the domestic market so that companies are manufacturing for the domestic market, not so much for export's sake?
This is a little intertwined. We may be a high tariff nation, and so Trump may be accurate in the factual parts of his allegations that India is a high tariff economy. But these tariffs are legally within all the limits that have been set under WTO. Of course. And so we are well within our limits. In fact, we have room to raise them. The fact that we haven't raised them, so that's the legal position. The legal position also is that Trump is now perhaps destroying the world order, the economic world order. He's saying, I don't care about those legal commitments. I don't care about WTO. I just care about making America great again. And in that case, if you are charging tariffs, I will charge tariffs. So he's becoming Xi Jinping in some sort of a way. But in a crude way, Xi Jinping does the same thing and worse in a quiet way. He's articulating it in an aggressive manner. So where does that leave India?
What does that mean for us?
Are we going to rest our elbows on the multilateral agreements that we have signed? Or are we going to do a bilateral with America? Having said that, can we do a bilateral with America without opening it out for other countries? These are the questions that need to be addressed on the trade side.
All right.
So it's one thing to demand something, and we will not allow your goods to come to India. So that's and America is an important geography as it goes. But are we part of the rules-based order or not? Is the philosophical underlying?
I think the rules-based order is being blown to smithereens.
In that case,
That's exactly what Trump
we
is
need
doing.
to look at what's best for us.
But also, I don't think necessarily Trump is all bad for us. Trump, the good news is he's slightly off, but transactional.
That's the good news.
no, it is. But he's
The fact that he's
transactional.
off.
No, he's totally transactional.
He's transactional, which means that
You scratch my
no
back,
go
I'll
game
scratch
mentality.
there
yours.
is an opportunity for us, and which means that we cannot want to do 500 things with him.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he
Yeah.
or his focus is on 500
He doesn't
things.
have that.
So we need, X number of things. If he wants, for the sake of argument, 300 Harley Davidsons in India to get a tax relief, I would, personally speaking, give that, and he will give you something else in return, because guess what? He also knows that strategically,
He needs
China
India.
may give him X, Y, Z, but he knows that, and America's institutional establishment also clearly knows that India is important in the global frame of things. So
I
we need
agree
to
with
think of where we place our chips rather than, sort of spread it all over and hope for something.
One more point I want to make on this is that so far India has been about either we get the deal that we want or it's a no deal.
No
or,
deal.
or we
Yeah.
walk.
Yep.
And I think
Great point.
as a $4 trillion economy, we don't have that luxury anymore.
Anymore.
We have to negotiate and get what we can,
What we can get.
and give some before we take some.
Rajiv?
So that's important what he's saying, because Trump is essentially a deal maker. The art of the deal. Remember, that's his
Yeah.
most famous book.
Yeah.
So unless you understand that and do deals with him, you're nowhere in the whole system. So I don't know if there are people who understand this here in India.